Hi, I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Chris Jerry, Afshin Banab, and Vincent Charles. Welcome to this week's edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. Gentlemen, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to spend the first 18 minutes talking about football. And we're going to start out, Vincent, with the Washington Redskins. They were very successful against the New England Patriots in their first preseason game. However, as preseason games go, it's not really of importance, not unless you are trying to make the team or if you are a rookie and if you're a veteran trying to get in a couple of reps. But for all intents and purposes, James Brady didn't even start that game.
That's right. And it is a period of evaluation. You're right about that, Kevin. What I did see in my evaluation, Aldrick Robinson had a great game. He is showing by that performance that he belongs in the mix with the receivers, up there with Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson. Now, Andre Roberts, who's also in that mix, he looked good on special teams. The two young running backs, they looked real good in the second half. Defensively, I saw some lousy tackling on the kickoff squad.
All right, let's fast forward ahead and get your thoughts on that game and beyond, Afshin.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the running backs. Lake Seastrunk had a pretty good game. It is the first preseason game, like you said, Kevin, and that's why Tom Brady wasn't really in this game. But what it does for the players, the second, third, and fourth string players, is it gives them an opportunity to showcase what they can do in case they are cut by this team. The running back situation is what I'm interested in because they've got really 5, 6 good running backs on this team, and they're going to have to cut 1 or 2 of them. And those 2 players that they cut, whether it be an Evan Royster, for instance, most likely will be on another football team if they're not here in Washington. Andre Roberts is actually exactly what they need to return kickoffs. The defense, of course, is always suspect.
Chris.
Well, I just add, because I was at the Ravens-49ers game, I didn't get to watch this game at all. But, I think just based on the highlights that I saw, there's some good play in the preseason games. But again, as we all know, don't get too carried away with preseason because it is what it is. The first string only plays like the first half of the first quarter. But I think the Redskins will probably have a pretty decent season this year.
Now, Afshin, you talked in terms of the defense looking suspect. What few things stand out to you in which they need to improve upon, or what things that don't look right in your mindset?
They've got to figure out their safety situation with Brandon Merriweather and who exactly is going to play with him. That's the big thing. I like what Amerson is doing. I think he's got a lot more confidence this year in his second year than he did last year. As a matter of fact, what I did see for the first time in a long time is a majority of the players looked like they had a lot of confidence and they knew what they were doing on the field. And I think now it comes down to a matter of technique and scheme and X's and O's. Jim Haslett is running the defense. The chains are off of his ankles right now. He's allowed to do whatever he wants according to what Jay Gruden is saying. It's time to see what the defense can do, but the safety issue is important to me. And then in order to help out the safeties, Arakpo and Kerrigan are going to have to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback this year. That's going to take some of that steam off of the safeties and DBs.
All right, thank you much, Afshin. If you're just joining us, you're watching the Nation's Capital Sports Show here at AIM via Comcast 69 and Files 38. Vincent, we're going to let you have the last word on this.
And I agree with you, Afshin. In that game, Arakpo did have a sack, and Kerrigan had a quarterback hurry. And in order for that defense to play well, especially the secondary, the Redskins have got to have a pass rush. That defense has got to be physical. So with the defense, it starts up front.
All right, gentlemen, let's start our conversation talking about the University of Maryland Terps football team. Under Coach Randy Edsall in his second year, the Terps went 7-6 in the 2013 season, in their last year in the ACC. This year, they enter the Big Ten Conference, where the level of competition and skill set increases dramatically. Afshin?
It does. I mean, the ACC is not something to laugh about, but they do go to a tough conference in the Big Ten. They're going to have some really good competition with Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, the Big Ten up and down. So it'll be interesting. Maryland is returning 17 players this year, 17 starters. So that's a good thing. The suspect is, of course, C.J. Brown. What's he going to do?
That's right. And my 3 questions for you guys would be, 1, can C.J. Brown stay healthy? 2, who will provide the depth along the offensive line? And 3, how will the secondary fare? Since you started it, I'm going to actually continue it with these questions. Vince, to get you to jump in regards to C.J. Brown.
Okay. C.J. Brown, when he's healthy, he can play well. So that is a big question mark. But I think an even bigger question mark is that offensive line, Kevin. And a couple of the guys returning on that offensive line is the center, and his name is Sal Conaboy. And he's up possibly to win the Remington Award, which is for one of the top linemen in the country. So they're set as far as center, quarterback, receivers. But that offensive line is a question mark. Some of the other people that are coming back in that offensive line are Silvano Altamirano and also Evan McElroy. They're fighting it out at left guard.
All right, going to have to cut you off there. We only have 6 minutes. Chris.
Yeah, I think Mike Loxley is like the master recruiter. He's the offensive coordinator. So I think there's going to be a lot of good things for Maryland. Well, better than expected for Maryland. I shouldn't say a lot of good things, especially with that many starters returning. But, again, when we're talking about going into the Big Ten, the Big Ten might not be overall as good as the ACC, but the Big East, or not the Big East, I'm sorry, the Big Ten Eastern section where Maryland is, that's the loaded part of the conference.
Right. Indiana, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, and Rutgers. Let's talk about in terms of what you started, Chris, in regards to strength of schedule. Does anyone stand out there in terms of giving Maryland a potentially hard time?
Well, I think all of them you just mentioned, really. The games, if I'm Maryland, I mean, right away, I hope they schedule Rutgers for their homecoming game if they play Rutgers at home.
They do play Rutgers, and it's the very last game of the season in the Big Ten schedule. At home, though.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing for Maryland is that they will have some really tough teams in that East. But I think overall, if they can get 3 wins out of this season in the conference, that'll be good for them.
Afshin, Chris, Vincent. They're going to be playing in some huge stadiums.
Yes.
Something in which the Terps are not familiar with.
Right.
They can barely sell out their stadium. But when the teams come in to play the Terps, they're going to fill that up.
That's right.
How will they regulate and playing against these massive crowds? Because it's going to make a difference, and it's going to take some time to get used to.
Well, the one thing is they don't have to play in the Big House this year, the largest stadium in the country. That's next year. So they're lucky there. But when Ohio State comes to town, when Michigan State comes to College Park, these seats are going to absolutely fill up. And, they're going to have their work cut out for them against schools like that. Like Chris was saying, maybe not top to bottom, but those top schools, those 4, 5, 6, that Eastern Division, that's the toughest division. 8 out of the last 10 Big Ten champions came out of the East. So they're going to have their work cut out for them, whether they play at College Park in front of 40, 45,000, or whether they play in the Big House in front of 115,000.
You think they're going to have to, Coach Randy Edsall may implement one of those noise drills in terms of a huge crowds? Because they do reach a feverish pitch as far as the Big Ten is concerned. Some of the games, at least I've seen.
Yeah, I think on the road, when they go to, in the ACC, when they've gone to Clemson or Florida State, they've played in front of crowds like that. The thing that's going to be interesting for Maryland, which I think they will not have experienced before in terms of playing in front of big crowds, is at home. Unfortunately, a lot of that's going to be because half the stadium is going to be pulling for the opposing team. But it's okay because the thing for Maryland football is that they want the 55,000 seats at Byrd Stadium filled up. They don't need to be playing in front of 45,000, just have a wall of empty seats in that large upper deck that they have.
Well, as the saying goes, be careful of what you ask for or wish for sometimes, Vincent.
They're going to have trouble in those large stadiums. They're going to have trouble the whole year, guys. I hear optimism. And I've read some periodicals. Some people are saying Maryland's going to finish 6-6. I don't think so.
All right.
I think the most wins Maryland's going to get is 3. And whether they're going to get any in the Big Ten, that is a question. They just don't have the Big Ten talent, especially up front.
Actually.
They got thank you, Kevin. The beginning of their season, they got South Florida, they got West Virginia and Syracuse. And James Madison, so they might get to 6 wins.
I say 3-9. Some of our viewers and listeners might not like that, but I'm trying to be realistic with their talent.
Well, if you want to, sorry about that, Chris. If you want to chime in on this, you can hit us up on email at info@tncss.net. Chris, we're going to let you briefly talk about this because we have to get to something else that involves the Terps.
And mine's just going to be 10 seconds to say if they go 3-9. Randy Edsel won't be back
That's
next year.
That's possible. That's highly possible.
All right, let's move on to something else, Chris, you're going to bring to our attention, or you have brought to our attention during the pregame show planning, and that is the University of Maryland. Well, they get their wallets kind of softened to the tune of 31, which I guess is better than what?
Well, yeah. Well, briefly, what happened is when Maryland decided to leave the ACC for the Big Ten, the ACC went to enforce their $52 million buyout fee, and Maryland, of course, said no, we're not paying that because we didn't vote with the rest of the conference for that fee. Well, what's happened is there's been a settlement reached, and the settlement is that it's going to be $31 million will be the buyout fee. Now, how do we get there? Because what the ACC did very smartly is when Maryland announced they were leaving, they no longer gave Maryland any TV revenue, any bowl revenue, or anything. So what that $31 million is, it's not so much Maryland coming out of their pocket paying $31 million. It's the money that the ACC had collected that Maryland should have gotten that they never gave to them. And that's the settlement. All lawsuits are dropped. Goodbye to Maryland, to the Big Ten. Have a good time. ACC will move on.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, Afshin, and Vincent. Let's move on to talking about the NCAA autonomy. And this, of course, is a big hot issue in the news. The NCAA Board of Governors voted to grant autonomy to 5 of the biggest revenue-producing FBS conferences. And we're going to talk about this from many layers. Let's first start out talking about what this means to the student athlete. And we're going to start out with Chris.
Well, what it means is that the schools will now be able to give athletes, Division I athletes, the full cost of a scholarship. Before, what they were able to give them was tuition, books, room and board, and that's it. As you know, if you're going to school, if you're a regular student, you need more than that. You need to be able, things, little small things like, hey, I'd like to be able to go to a movie. I'd like to be able to go to a restaurant. I'd like some little small changes. It's not any big money like thousands of dollars per player, but they'll be able to give them some sort of small stipend to and allow them to take care of things that normal students would be able to take care of.
Now, Afshin, this was on the books a long time ago, but why now is the NCAA deciding to do this?
Well, they don't want to lose a lot of those big schools.
Yeah,
and
money,
keep
right?
them, keep them under the auspices of the NCAA. These are some things that we don't need to be altruistic here. These are some things that were thought about years ago by commissioners of all these leagues, and the NCAA just knocked them down, and they took a vote. They took things to a vote like the stipend, like the medical coverage, like the tuition that Chris is talking about, and they were just flat out knocked down every time. And the NCAA or these big conferences said, "Look, we're just going to go ahead and form our own football conference if you don't want to be a part of this. This is what we need to do: stipends, medical coverage, tuition based on the city where you're playing, the college that you're playing. USC and UCLA in the Los Angeles area, well, they make a lot. It's a lot different there, the cost of living, than in Pullman, Washington, for instance. So that's going to work out to about $2,000 to $5,000, I think, per athlete for every year."
Now, Vincent, this hasn't been without its opponents. And Bill Snyder, head football coach at Kansas State, says that college football has sold out. What do you say, sir?
Well, I say money talks, for one thing. And the big money was threatening to walk, as Afshin has alluded to. And I think this has been a good compromise because those big schools were trying to get away from NCAA, okay? And the NCAA was able to still keep them in the fold. Now, these stipends and things, I think they're going to start out small, but gradually they're going to get bigger because the players in these conferences are going to want more because when they see all this television money. So it's a good way for them to compromise with the NCAA. It's possible that some of the people on the outside may try litigation, sure, but I think now it's going to hold.
Speaking of compromise, this actually takes a different precedence for all the sports. What direction do you see this headed in for other teams within the NCAA, Chris?
Well, I think for right now, the Power Five conferences, they call them, before, we had the BCS, the Big Six of the BCS, but the Big East dropped off of that. Now there's the 5 power conferences. I think, I think this is a good thing, because I think before what happened is you had schools that didn't have the same agenda as the big schools being able to vote on what the big schools couldn't do. And as you said, Vincent, which is right on the point, basically what they did was almost at gunpoint. They said, are you guys going to give us autonomy? Because basically if those football conference schools left, they could take the basketball with them, and then all these other conferences, Big East and whatever, they wouldn't be able to make it. So,
funny you mention that. I kind of, when I read this, I pictured it like, here's the kid that has all the marbles in the sandlot, and he's going to go away from the kids and take all of his marbles and leave the other kids sitting with nothing. It's almost a question. It's almost the issue of the have and have-nots, Afshin.
It is. If you want to play with my marbles, you got to play under my rules. But absolutely, that's what it is. It's the haves telling the have-nots. This is how it's going to be. Are you with us or are you against us? And if you're against us, you're probably not going to be around for much longer. And I like to call it the Power 5 plus 1, because Notre Dame, even though they're technically in the ACC, they're really still an independent school, and they'll be a part of this too. So there's 65 schools that are involved, but we'll see. The haves are ruling.
That's right. Well, and the haves actually have decided, and the fate game sealed over. Yeah. All right. So let's talk in terms of how this relates into other things of consideration, Vincent, and when we talk in terms of NASCAR and the recent rash of head injuries or concussions that have happened in the NFL. And it seems that NASCAR is actually following in the footsteps in terms of the template for the NFL. So what do you have there for us, sir?
It is, Kevin, and this is one thing to consider. Former NASCAR driver Jeff Bodine is leading the push to create a pension or medical fund for retired NASCAR drivers. Bodine suffered a serious accident in his racing car career. He sustained a series of concussions, and this eventually led to his retiring from racing. If anything, he can follow the template of the NFL.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Sometimes you look at these NASCAR races and you see them go head on, so then the concussion thing is important. But speaking of NASCAR, another thing that's really serious that just happened is Tony Stewart was involved in an accident, an off-track race the night before their big race up in Watkins Glen. The young man got killed. There's a big investigation going on about that. Did Stewart do it on purpose or what have you? But it's just one of those NASCAR stories that's kind of sad anytime you hear about somebody losing his life, especially in a situation like that. All
right. Well, thank you very much, Chris, Afshin, and Vincent. I'm Kevin Jeter, and when we return, we're going to be talking more sports. As a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about those Washington Nationals that are doing pretty good in the National League East. Also, you can listen to us on TuneIn.com. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. We'll be right back after the jump. Welcome back to the Nation's Capital Sports Show. I'm Kevin Jeter with Afshin Bernard, Vincent Charles, and Chris Jerry. You can like us on Facebook.com/TNCSS.net. Gentlemen, let's continue, and that's .com. Excuse me. Thank you very much. All right, so let's continue talking about those Washington Nationals. So far, so good. Even Bryce Harper got his groove back on. And Afshin, you look like a genius because you and Steven actually predicted that they would get a outfielder or something to that effect for the draft?
The middle infielder, which they got, Asdrubal Cabrera. And they also got a reliever. But, again, here they are in the middle of the series with the Atlanta Braves, and they just can't shake them off, though they have won a lot more than they've lost recently. So they're in first place right now, and they've got to keep it going. But they've got to start hitting, and Bryce Harper has got to really start getting his bat on the ball.
Yeah, but I love that runoff last inning home run that he had. That was pretty awesome. Cool. Yeah, that was nice.
That was a nice walk-off.
Yeah. Chris?
Unfortunately, that's really the only thing he's done.
You killjoy.
That's the only thing he's really done.
At least you're being honest.
2 or 3 weeks.
You're
killing Vincent boy like that, man.
What are you going to do? But, they do have Atlanta on 4 games over the next 7 games, and this is a time for them to kind of pick up. I think, Atlanta's coming off of a streak where they lost 8 in a row, and you would expect that the Nationals would have widened their lead. They still have a healthy 4-game lead, but nonetheless, we're in August, the dog days are here, and they really need to start widening that lead. I'd feel better if they were up by 10 by the time we got to September.
Vincent.
Chris, remember, he's not 22 yet. Most 21-year-olds, they're up in Syracuse or Harrisburg hanging out, drinking a Slurpee at 7-Eleven and playing in the minors.
That's true.
He's a special talent. Harper's going to get it together. Don't worry about that. And it's nice to see that he's starting to come around. LaRoche is starting to come around. Jason Worth, he's a little bit hobbled right now, but he had a heck of a month last year. He was player of the month. Denard Span is just playing fantastic, both in the field and at the plate. The addition of Cabrera has been decent, and he will help the team, and defensively, he will help the team especially. They are going to fight it out with the Braves. It looks like that's the way it's going to be till the end of the season. The relievers had a few hiccups lately. Soriano, sometime, he gets that heart rate up. But
that's right. He's the cardiac kid, as you mentioned. Let's move on and talk about let's talk about something else that perhaps in the pitching starting pitcher who's actually not coming around, and it's causing a concern as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I'm talking about Steven Strasburg. It seems to me that he hasn't lived up to his expectations. We kind of hinted around this on past shows and podcasts and stuff, but he's up for contract renewal sometime in 2016. It seems like between now and 2015 that he will want to get his act together. And this is not not me being hard on Strasburg, but I'm kind of wondering, and when I sit and watch him give away games, and some of it's not his fault because he doesn't get that run support, but nine times out of 10, it perhaps is Strasburg the ace material that we thought he would be? Chris?
At this point, I'd have to say no. I mean, I share your thoughts. I'm very disappointed that he's not ace. One time, when you have an ace, one thing you expect him to do sometimes is if you're on a little bit of a mini losing streak, you want him to shut down. And he's not doing it. The guy who's doing it, to my mind, is Doug Fister. Mm-hmm. That's been the ace so far this year. But I'm very disappointed with Strasburg. I think he's a fine pitcher, but whether he's going to be one of those once-in-a-generation guys, I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
I'll tell you what, Mike Rizzo, that may be the best move he has made. He had a chance to get Porcello or Fister, and both of them are having lights-out years, and Doug Fister has done really well, especially coming off the injury at the beginning of the season. So Doug Fister is my ace of the team right now. Gonzalez is having a down year. Zimmerman's playing well, but I agree with you guys about Strasburg.
In terms of Strasburg?
I eventually think Strasburg will come around. He still has a decent ERA, and he still has a lot of strikeouts. There have been games, to be fair to him, that the team has not supported him.
And I even mentioned that. So but to what extent do you use that, not necessarily as an excuse? He has to be consistent. He hasn't been consistent. If anything, he's been persistently inaccurate. So let's continue our conversation. Chris.
Well, I would just say one thing that's good about him is he's horrible on the road, but he is good at home.
I was going to say.
Yes, he is.
He's consistent, right? We can all agree on that.
I was going to say, well, he's consistent there. He has been bad on the road. I'd like to know what his ERA is, like the first 3 or 4 innings on road games.
That's right.
Road games, and see how he's done there, because that's what's really killed Strasburg more than anything, playing on the road.
Once again, people, we do love Steven Strasburg. I don't know if you follow this through 160 podcasts and however many ever shows that we have done here. We're actually fans of Strasburg. We're just disappointed, and I think I speak for all of us. Who has been the brightest star so far on this team in terms of Fister? Actually.
In terms of Fister?
Yeah, the brightest stars.
Oh, well, he's been one of them, that's for sure. Rendon absolutely has been. You know what, getting back to what you were saying about Bryce Harper, Vincent, when he hit that walk-off home run, do you know who the first person was that went over to congratulate him? The guy he kind of threw under the bus, Denard Span. And he's having a lights-out year, like you said, Vincent. And I would probably put those 3 right at the top: Fister, Rendon, and maybe Span.
Well, perhaps young Harper can learn a few things in terms of class, and this is how you handle yourself. Chris?
Well, I would say that the one big contribution that Bryce Harper has done is to open his mouth about what the lineup should be, because every time, seriously, ever since he said that, Nobody on that team has been better. None of the field players better than Span.
Yep.
He's got a 35-game on-base streak. His average, unlike Harper's, his average is going to 300 and not below the Mendoza line like Harper. So I say definitely Harper did help him there, but I think Span is the MVP so far of the team.
Ashley, I'm going to let you have the last
All
word.
right. And you know what's interesting about that, too, Chris, is Harper arguably is the star of this team. I think we all can agree he is the star of this squad. And when Harper made that comment, Matt Williams had to retort. Not one Washington National player that I know of came out, at least publicly, and sided with Bryce Harper on that issue.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I think Harper's not obviously a bad person.
No, not to say that.
And I'm not putting words in your mouth, and that's my thoughts. And we're not saying that. We're not implying that. But there's certain things in which the young man should just be a little bit, show a little jurisprudence about in regards to that. So thank you very much, Chris, Afshin, and Vincent, and talking about our beloved Washington Nationals. We know that they will do better and continue to get better. Here's something for your consideration. I'm going to throw this out here on the table now that we have a couple of minutes to talk about this, at least one comment each. This is in regards to John Baer, an ESPN reporter. He asked Redskins owner Dan Snyder, what does the name Redskin mean to you? So I'm going to read this to you verbatim. Here's Redskins owner Dan Snyder. A Redskin is a football player. A Redskin is our fans. The Washington Redskin fan base represents honor, represents respect, represents pride. Old Danny boy seems like he just won't let the name go. Stay tuned. The fireworks, I guess, will continue. Chris.
You know what, to be honest with you, I think all of those things that you just read that he said are true. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't remove the fact that the name has a racist connotation. It's interesting that Chris Cooley, one of their former great players, even suggested that he, on his shirt that says Redskins, he should just get rid of the S to say he's a Redskin, you know.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Afshin.
He's wrong. I mean, it's his team. He can say what he wants. Chris, you make a point. And
Thank you, Afshin.
No, I mean, he's right about how the fans feel. This is our football team. That's how a lot of those fans feel. But he's wrong about the name. He's absolutely wrong about that name.
But it seems like Mr. Snyder is defiant on this one to the end, or until he is forced to change the name, or when it becomes financially feasible for him to do so.
Yep.
Real quick, Vincent, let's get you to talk for like 15 seconds. Your thoughts on this?
I think Snyder, he's not going to want to change until he's about forced to do it. He thinks that, you know, and he thinks that the Redskins are honoring that name. They may be, but it offends a lot of people, so eventually he's going to have to change.
That's right. You know, I feel like doing like this, and Vincent is my ventriloquist, because I've just said the same thing. I'm just messing with you. Well, gentlemen, we almost came to the end of the road, and I guess we are here. But before we get out of here, our email address is info@tncss.net. You can watch the Nation's Capital Sports Show on AIM via Comcast 69 and Files 38. Sunday at 3 p.m., Monday at 9:30 a.m., and Friday at 9:30 p.m. That was a bad joke, Vincent. My apologies there. Didn't go over well. And you know, you have a joke in your mind, and then you say it to yourself, then you think, oh man, that's going to go over well. But when you say it, it doesn't. It's like a gong show. If you don't know what the gong show is, Google that, my friends under 25 and under.
They don't know what the gong show is.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess you'll be Googling that. All right, Afshin, we have a lot of people that make us shine and make us look good behind a calendar, a camera, I should say, on any calendar day.
Any calendar day, right? Devin Gallagher, of course, the director. Tonight and always, Kimberly Phillip, Ken Briley, Dario Baguena, Janessa Jackson, Bill Weisner, of course, Craig Syfax, and a thank you to each and every one of them. And they make us look good, sound good, feel good, all that stuff.
And it goes over to Paul LaValle.
That's right, Paul LaValle, Jackie Stephen, up all the way to the top.
That's right. We're so thankful for this opportunity.
Yes.
160 podcasts. We have now 752 souls on our Facebook like page, and a lot of them want to know, when do we plan to do a live show, or will we have them in the studio? I kid you not. So they're happy to see that happen. We're going to have to see if we can make that happen. It's nice just to have that many Facebook likes, and we enjoy you guys watching and listening to us here on AIM. So for Chris, Jerry, Afshin Banab, Kevin Judon, And Vincent Charles, I'm Kevin Jeter. You're not Kevin Jeter. We thank you for watching the Nation's Capital Sports Show. We thank you for listening to the Nation's Capital Sports Show. Go out and have yourself a great sporting day and a great sporting week. Take care.